now. You glitched there for a minute, and then
Oh,
you reappeared, as wizards are prone to do, of course.
oh yeah.
We were talking about Viking gods, the
Mm-hmm.
Norse gods. We spoke about Woden. We spoke about Thor and Freya. Then we came on to Ing,
Mm.
and the Ing turns up in our language quite a lot. In fact, anything ending in the letters ing has a little bit of ing in
That's
it.
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, ing runically is about becoming. How, when, and why would you invoke somebody like Ing?
Oh gosh. Well, I think Ing was a his name in the Germanic lands was Ingvi Friar, so it would be the same as the male part of Freya. So so what we would say is Ing or Ingvi. He was depicted as a phallic god. He was depicted as a god with an erect phallus, um, and therefore he's very much to do with procreation, fertility, and all the rest of it. So yeah, Ing would be Ing. I think would be if you wanted to fortify yourself, if that's the best word, and appear in the best light. And Ing is particularly male, if you like, rather
Male
than,
fertility.
yeah, yeah. Basically, I think the way that these gods worked in their origin is that they had a male and a female aspect. And in the case of Friar, we know that is the case. Um, the Ing, well, Ing would tend to be a male principle, but what one thing that comes out is you have names like, for instance, the Clavering Hundred, which is the one near Loddon, and there the Ing probably means like something like a people of the Claveringers, yeah. And the ing part there means that they're all part of one tribal group, if you like, and so it not only is the individual procreating, it's the tribe procreating, if you can understand that. Yep.
We had, of course, in this Nordic tradition, and I realize we're focusing a lot on the Nordic tradition. I would say the reason for that is because it's the one perhaps of greatest relevance to Norfolk, isn't it? Because it's, I know there are others like such as Wicca, but the Norse tradition would certainly at one point have been very much the dominant religion to the magician of East Anglia, would it not?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think you may well have been right. Um, if you're saying that um, the it no, let's say it again. What we have today is we don't actually have much Wicca as such, really for historical reasons as much as anything else. But we do have a lot of interest in these Norse deities, and I think that it's a natural thing in this part of the world. Um, if you're going to be a pagan, to take an interest in Norse paganism, whether it's Anglo-Saxon paganism or Viking paganism, which is slightly different, but for this part of the world, then I think it's a natural thing to be.
We had a baddie, of course, in the form of Loki.
Yes.
What can we say about Loki, the Norse baddie?
Oh well, I mean, he has a starring role, if you like, in accounts of the Norse people. I mean, particularly if you're like me and interested in German opera, then Loki is a key figure, if you like. You're quite right. He's identified as a baddie, but his magic, if you like, is something in which, if you like, then leads to the New World. If you remember the story of Balder the Beautiful, the one who is killed by he is killed by a piece of mistletoe, because in the listing of things that Balder couldn't be killed by, they forgot the mistletoe, and so of course that was Loki's doing. Yeah, it's the trickster aspect of deities, which is, we don't think we're in the Christian Islamic religions and so on. The trickster aspect tends to be put as a devil, but of course in these many godded religion, god and goddesses religions, then the trickster just falls in with the rest of them. I would say, it's a good question though. It's a good question. I mean, what is the role of a trickster deity in modern paganism? I've actually played. We had a little play about Sif and Sif, the corn goddess, and Loki came into that. And guess who was chosen? It was me who was chosen to be Loki,
the bad boy.
the bad boy. Yeah.
He plays integral role in the end of the world at Ragnarok, doesn't he, Loki? Yeah, and does he continue? Does he go out as a bad guy, or does he rejoin the other gods at the end of all things at Ragnarok?
Well, I mean, this is a slightly controversial thing, because, of course, the amount of written evidence we have is very small, and the idea of a lot of what we have about the Norse tradition comes from what is called the Prose Edda. Now, the Prose Edda was written by a person called Snorri, and Snorri was a Christian, so there are thoughts that Snorri may have put in things that reminded him of God and the devil and so on. That's where it gets quite controversial in a way, because the scholars think one thing and maybe the pagans think another thing. So, but I don't think there's any harm in that. That's the way things go. Tend to go with religions. Yeah.
He wouldn't be the first historian to use a poetic license, would he?
Oh no, and I mean, he was writing at a time when his country was already Christianized, so you can't blame him for putting a Christian cast on things, I think. And there is what is called the Prose Edda, which is much older, but you can see differences between them. But then that was just the way it worked. I mean, if you look at the Christian way of life, there are differences between the four Gospels, for instance, and then actual factual differences in what Jesus did and said. And it shouldn't surprise us that the same thing occurs in the Norse tales. They are, that's just the way they were put together.
Authors don't always agree on everything.
No.
One interesting pagan character, very much an East Anglian, is, of course, King Redwald.
Yes.
Who famously converted to Christianity not because he wanted to, but because of political expediency, i.e., he was surrounded by other Christian kings and was somewhat feeling the heat. But he did actually marry a pagan priestess of some sort, didn't he? A practitioner of the craft, no less.
Ooh, yes, I mean, Redwold famously had a palace at Rendlesham, probably where the church is at Rendlesham or nearby, and he had two personal altars. He had one altar to the Christian deities and another altar to the pagan deities. And of course, the church didn't like this at all and told him to take them down. You know that it wasn't on to worship. To be a Christian and to be a pagan as well. But I have to say, if you look at modern day, if you have a look at modern day pagans, there are some of them who still retain a bit of Christianity. They're not all exclusively pagan. There are some who are what I call dual faith observants. So they will observe some Christian festivals and some pagan festivals. But yeah, Redwold was he was trying to do that, and he, as far as we know, that was what he did. You know, if the stuff we find at Sutton Hoo, just down the road, is representative of Redwold, then it is much more pagan in character than it is Christian in character, you know. So
this would have been political, wouldn't it? I mean, it was no chance thing that he converted to Christianity to avoid war with the neighboring kingdoms from Rome. And it was also, I think, no chance thing that he married a pagan priestess, because that would have kept the people happy. So he had this kind of balancing act between one lot of people he got to please on the one hand and his own people on the other. So he was probably quite a shrewd operator, you think?
Well, that may be so, and of course, the kingdom of East Anglia probably was never more powerful than in his time. You know, he managed to balance out these forces, and you know, the king, and when it did eventually become completely Christian, it was not shortly after that it was edged out by Mercia and ceased to become the Kingdom of East Anglia anymore. So you could say, well, the fact of it being pagan didn't do him any harm, you know. No.
But he did actually go and conquer large tracts of the rest of the country, didn't he?
Ah, well, you're talking. Yeah, I mean, as far as the actual history of Redwold is concerned, I'd have to slot up on that, I think. But
he did. He definitely did.
He definitely did. Yeah. And of course, it was
another time.
Yeah. I think that might be for a bit of swatting, and of course, I'm very influenced by having gone to Sutton Hoo countless times to see the Sutton Hoo treasure. Yeah.
Mm. You personally play a role in joining the faiths. I know this is something that's quite important to you.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how a pagan brings his ideas to this interfaith community, which again is right here in Norfolk?
Well, my first involvement in this was because Great Yarmouth Town Hall contacted me. They said we're setting up an interfaith group for Great Yarmouth, or Greater Yarmouth, I believe, and would I be a part of it? And I said yes, I would be. I wouldn't object to being a pagan on that, and so I have been a pagan in the Greater Yarmouth. Greater Yarmouth Interfaith and Belief Network for about the last 5 years now, if not more. It might be longer. The way I operate is, first of all, I made it very clear that I'm a pagan. I'm not anything else. I'm a pagan, and that I would be speaking on behalf of pagans. Now, the the tricky side of it is, of course, that there are different sorts of pagans. There are the druids, there are the heathens, the ones we've been talking about. There are shamans and so on and so forth. So you've got to be able to discern in your own way. But what I generally do is I lead from pagan witchcraft, because pagan witchcraft in this area is still the majority, I think, of pagans. So that's how I present myself. I present myself as a pagan, practicing pagan witchcraft, which I have done. And if there are any questions come up about the other ones, then I will try to answer them individually. And but apart from that, it's really just putting the pagan point of view. We recently we've had meetings where we've been discussing this and discussing that, and I tried to work out the pagan point of view and put it, and I do believe that I'm respected for all that. There are some of the more happy clappy Christian sects who won't sit in the same room with me. Well, probably rightly, I suppose. But from the interfaith point of view, of doing that, and then I'm also a member of the Waveney interface as well, which is Lowestoft, Beccles, and so on. And I got involved in that really because my friend Ruth wanted to be involved in that, and I said, well, I'll take you along, but I got involved in that as well. The other thing I do quite a bit of is when we get these seasonal festivals, and the one coming up is Lammas, I've put a little note which goes out to all the interfaith members so they know what Lammas is, or these other ones. I mean, we just had May Day and May Eve, and then we had Midsummer's Day. That's right, we had Midsummer's Day is the last one, isn't it? And so I was able to write a little bit about that, and okay, it sometimes involves me writing down things about Christianity, but I don't mind that. I mean, in the case of Midsummer, we have the solstice, and then a few days later, you have Midsummer's Day, not on the same day. A few days later.
5th, I think, isn't it?
I think that's right. But I mean, certainly this year you had the solstice, and the reasons for that is just to do with the position of the planets and so on. But really, on Midsummer's Day, it starts getting darker every morning and evening until we get to Christmas. And Christmas Day, the opposite process comes into play, but it's not the same as the solstice. The solstice is slightly different. So I do things like that. At the moment, I have to say the interface is rather quiet. We have been thinking about having a Zoom meet or something like that, but that hasn't happened just at the moment. But I've still been posting things on their Facebook groups, so that's how it works. Anybody from any faith is welcome along, or no faith. If you've got no faith at all, you can still come along and put your own point of view. So I found it a very friendly background. Certainly some faiths that you think would be go off their nuts with having me as a member don't. Once the Muslims had found out who I am and what I did, then I was accepted in the interfaith by them. So it's quite a satisfying thing, really. It makes you stretch your mind in a slightly different way than normal, and yes.
Well, is there any chance, I suppose, anybody watching this or listening to it on the radio is going to
Yeah.
be thinking to themselves, is there any chance at all that the day might one day come that these people merge, that they set aside their differences and just kind of gel together as some kind of singular faith? And I do not mean by that one conquers the others and does it by
No,
force. I
no.
mean that they simply, shave off the square edges to something rounder so that they can, become one and the same thing. Is there any sign of that happening, do you think?
Well, what we have done successfully in Great Yarmouth, with the mayor in attendance and so on, is that we have had an interfaith service. And this has been hosted by the Methodists, and it's only fair that the Methodists would sort of take a lead there. But we've had this interfaith service where everybody has presented a bit from their own faith, including from the Quran, for instance, and in both English and Arabic. So interfaith services, I think, are happening already. I don't see why they shouldn't go on that way. The last one we had was very successful. This year might be a bit interrupted by the fact we haven't met since March. We've been locked down like everybody else. But yeah, I can see that interfaith services will continue and will be useful. Also, sometimes if there are clergy, they like to say a prayer. Well, that doesn't bother me. I will happily say amen at the end of it. Yes. So I think a very gradual coming together may happen. I already know of people who practice one faith and another. One particular lady I've got in mind is part of a Jewish congregation, but she's also involved with pagans as well. So
I think I know who that is, mentioning
you probably do know who that is. Yeah.